I'm seeing the sales report come in, and remind you, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars making every movie, right?
Yep.
So I'm always majorly in debt when I finish a movie. And I'm seeing all these sales reports coming in, and I'm not getting paid, and I'm not getting paid, and I'm not getting paid. Now I'm borrowing money to sue the company, and I'm trying to make this film. And I remember I could have never in 100 million years, after all the pushback I got when I said I was going to make this documentary on this alleged crash case that happened in 1996 in Virginia, Brazil, that months after releasing the film, there was going to be an open congressional hearing with a bipartisan group of lawmakers listening to the testimony of a gentleman, high intelligence officer, under oath, saying that there's a crash retrieval program. Because I found out the Americans' involvement, again, I'd heard little rumblings of it over the 12-year period, but the most compelling aspect was that the flight control officer came forward publicly on camera in a podcast saying, I saw USAF. And I was like, well, USAF? United States Air Force. Plane coming in without Brazilian government authorization.
That's you guys.
And he was not supposed to let the thing land. And he... and then a high-level government officer. This is what he says on camera. This guy Marco, I'm trying to think of his name. And when you're with the like the police department, you're with the military in Brazil. If you're with the fire department, you're with the military in Brazil. You're air control, flight control officer, you're with the military in Brazil, right? So this guy sees his plane coming in. He's like, they don't have authorization. I'm not supposed to let this plane land. It's USAF, United States Air Force, January 20th, 1996, coming into Campinas. It was going to land in Sao Paulo, then it stopped and it diverted, went to Campinas. And a military officer, I know it's funny, Campinas, Virginia.
The number of times you said that in episode 139, and people were like, I feel like he's saying penis every time.
Campinas, I know. Can't make it up. So I know, it sounds silly. But anyway, he said that a higher level military officer came in and let the plane land. Plane landed. I'm not sure if it was one helicopter or two helicopters, went over to Virginia, loaded some stuff on, came back, loaded the plane, boo, back to the United States. I was like, oh, wow, that really solidifies my belief that the Americans were involved. So now it's personal, right? So when I'm starting an investigation, I was already going to go to D.C. and start asking questions. But David Grush opened the door for me.
Yeah.
Like it was wide open. Now I'm damn straight going to ask those questions because I came to that conclusion, not because he said it, but because my boots on the ground in it, which is what I think is the best case in modern history, because most of the people are still alive.
Yeah, it was really cool to see this, like, as your friend in real time, because you went down to D.C. pre-Grush. You were there in, like, February 2023, getting initial interviews and things like that, and then it's almost like this movie you were working on, the stage of life set perfectly, and you're like, oh, I can get all this now?
Unbelievable. I know.
A little bit of divine intervention.
Could have never, and not only that, but who could have possibly have staged or orchestrated a drone invasion, a UAP invasion to coincide with the release of my movie?
Yeah.
People were calling me going, what kind of budget do you have to arrange to do that?
Much appreciated.
I had people calling me going, how did you orchestrate a drone invasion?
I actually, James, a little side note here. I just don't want to get this lost in the picture because you're such a humble guy and you've only said like a little bit publicly, but obviously us all talking, Alessi, you and me behind the scenes over the last couple of years, we were aware of some of the things you were dealing with from a production standpoint to get this done. But for people out there who want some details now that it is behind you, despite everything you also had to give up as well, but what went down there? Because this last documentary, Moment of Contact, you came on my podcast, it really exploded, and then Joe Rogan had you on, and it went to a whole different stratosphere, literally right behind Avatar worldwide, and then suddenly they're like, oh, we can't pay you.
Yeah.
I have to tell you about this game-changing product I use before a night out with drinks. It's called ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-Alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct, not your dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Last year, when I first heard about ZBiotics, I was a little bit skeptical. I'm like, could this really work? So I had my buddy's wedding, and I figured, let's give it a try. So I drank my ZBiotics before we went out. We had a great night full of fun festivities and a lot of other things. And the next morning, I woke up feeling pretty good. I was able to work out, go for a walk, take some calls, clean my apartment. Life was good. So whether it's vacations, weddings, birthdays, reunions, or just a good night out, get the most out of your upcoming plans by stocking up on your pre-alcohol now. You can do that by going to zbiotics.com/Julian to get 15% off your first order using code Julian, Julian, at checkout. Pre-alcohol is backed with 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied with your product, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. So remember to head on over to zbiotics.com/Julian and use code Julian at checkout to get 15% off your first order. Thank you to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
So that's just one of the things I was dealing with. So, excuse me, the production company that I'd signed a deal with, they'll probably remain nameless. Whatever, you can look that stuff up. Because
we're gonna take the bat out later. James, don't worry.
I know. So they got purchased. They got acquired by a larger company, and the larger company stopped paying royalties. Well, first they were really late, and then they got later. And I was getting really nervous, I was like, oh, everything's gonna be fine. Don't worry, it's we're transferring all the stuff over, and there's a little transition period, and it's just a little bit of a hiccup, and everything's gonna iron itself out. Everything's gonna be fine. Well, I didn't feel that way, so that starts happening, and and they had directly or indirectly all my movies distributed through this distribution company, all of them, right? So I had The Phenomenon, I had Moment of Contact. Out of the Blue, I Know What I Saw, 50 Years to Denial. They were indirectly through another individual. But in any case, so this starts happening. And while I'm trying to get interviews on the Hill, paralleling this disaster nightmare, I'm trying to get interviews on the Hill, and I'm literally having to send photos of production stills of me making The Phenomenon because staff members of Congress were going, no, hang on a second. This person said they made The Phenomenon. What? I'm like, no, I made The Phenomenon. What are you talking about? This guy said what? And they're like, yeah, well, he already came through and interviewed. I was like, no, I was sending literally production stills. And then there were all these military folks, intel folks that were told not to meet with me, to meet with this other individual who will remain nameless. But this is going on. So I'm getting blocked. I'm getting all of my financial support, all my finances completely devastated. And then paralleling that, I'm getting someone who's claiming responsibility for having done The Phenomenon, who's in the process of getting all these interviews on the Hill, and I'm having to explain who the hell I am. Well, thank God Christopher Mellon stepped in and started straightening the truth out. No, James made The Phenomenon.
We love the Mellon family. Yeah. They're always going to straighten it out.
Well, Chris Mellon really stepped up the plate for me, and I was really grateful to having him to do that. So he was telling people, no, James made it. And then all these intel folks that were told not to meet with me. It was just a nightmare. I just thought it felt like I was being extinguished. I mean, I just was like, I remember staring at the ceiling, to the level of stress. I'm seeing the sales report come in, and remind you, I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars making every movie, right? So I'm always majorly in debt when I finish a movie, and I'm seeing all these sales reports coming in, and I'm not getting paid, and I'm not getting paid, and I'm not getting paid. Now I'm borrowing money to sue the company. And I'm trying to make this film. And I remember staring at the ceiling. I'm not kidding. This was so devastating. I'm staring at the ceiling trying to go to sleep at night. I'm drinking a whiskey just to calm my nerves. And I'd fall asleep and I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh my God, I had the worst nightmare. God, thank God that was oh my God, no. And then I'd slowly wake up, and this was happening week after week. And the problem is I didn't have any end in sight. There was no resolution in sight. I didn't know how it was going to play out, right? So I actually called a buddy of mine, and I borrowed $50,000 from him so I could sue the company. I was just trying to go through all the different, I didn't know what to do. And finally the lawyer, and this went on for so many months, I won't bore your audience with the details, but finally this lawyer, my buddy Jesse, calls me and he goes, look, bro, I'd like to continue taking your money, but I'm just telling you where this is headed. I'm looking at their financials, and this is not going in the right direction. What's going to happen is they're about to declare bankruptcy, and then your assets, which are their assets, are now going to be in the hands of another company that you have no leverage with,
And you're lower on the
and
totem
I'm lower
pole.
the totem pole.
Yep.
And now you're not only going to owe me a bunch of money, you're never going to get that money they owe you, which is lottery money, right? And I hate to say this, James, but I'm just going to give you the best advice: play the game on the board, not the one in your head.
It's a good lawyer.
Take this deal, sign off. You're never going to get this money again. I need you to respond via email that you understand that you will never, ever get this money. It's gone forever. I have to get this distribution company to send, their legal department has to send all the various platforms a legal letter to pull them down. You think if they stop paying me, that automatically the rights would revert back to no. Nope. Every month I'm watching those sales reports and they're going in the pocket of a billionaire. Oh God, the level of frustration I was experiencing is like off the charts, man.
Yeah, and I want people to understand that too. I mean, they're hearing it from you right now, but like, you know, for you to have all the success of that film and essentially never see more than a couple dimes from it.
I still owe $100,000 on that film, and I actually was going to pay that back to one of my producers, this guy Donnie, and Donnie's been great to me over well over a decade, and I spent it thinking I had money coming in, and then he's like, "Well, why'd you spend it?" I was like, "Well, I spent it on the program, thinking that I didn't know I was going to get ripped off. I'm so sorry." So I said, "Why don't I just give you an executive producer credit in the program, and I'll pay you back when I make money from the program?" And he was cool. Thank God he was cool with that. But I remember at the time thinking, it was so devastating. First of all, I like to hike. I was like, I go for my hikes every day just to kind of clear my headspace because the level of stress was just beyond just anything like, oh my God. So I would really get out there and hike. And I said, okay, James, this is a very low point in your career. I've had all this success and now I'm in this position. I can't believe this. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to take this frustration, this anger, and I'm going to focus it like a laser-like precision. I'm going to produce a really good documentary. So I took all of that energy and I focused it into the program, and I worked 16, 17-hour days to the point where I could barely walk, getting my ass back to the edit studio. And I pushed myself to the brink of death to produce the program.
Listen, I want to say this as someone who's seen a lot of this behind the scenes and what happened here. You know, one of my favorite clips we ever recorded is not a public clip. It was actually a 15-minute Patreon episode when you were we were still in my parents' house back then when you were there 2 years ago.
I drove down there.
And that's the other thing. By the way, people want to know what a stand-up guy James Fox is. He calls me at 4:45 a.m. from the runway in Vermont going, "They said the engine doesn't work on the plane. They're going to see if they can give it a go." And I'm like, that doesn't sound promising at all. Obviously, they gave it a go, didn't work, didn't crash the plane, and then flight gets canceled. And we had Alessi, who still lived in Florida at the time. He had flown up for this. Now, he was as broke as I was, so this was like a big deal. And so we're like, oh, my God, this is going to get canceled. And you're like, fuck it, I'm driving. So you came down for 2 days, didn't even let me pay for your hotel. And we ended up recording for about 5 hours and 45 minutes on the second day. We did 2 podcasts. And in the middle of that, which, by the way, thank you for doing that. But
oh, yeah, thanks.
In the middle of that, we had like a 15-minute Patreon episode where you walked us through essentially your career journey and then especially your 8-year odyssey. And that's what I'll call it. Yeah. Making the Phenomenon, which for my money is the greatest UFO documentary ever made. Fucking phenomenal. It took you 25 years before that to get anywhere near the respect you deserved. You worked jobs from valeting to plumbing to whatever it was. All these things just to support yourself, pay for these documentaries yourself around the world, try to make something great, and then finally shout out to Joe Rogan for giving you the respect on the Phenomenon back in 2020 and putting you into the ethersphere. You then took all that money, put your money where your mouth is, put it into Moment of Contact. And so again, like when I see how close it came to you almost having to be like, if this doesn't work with the Phenomenon, I got to stop. Like my 25-year dream is over.
It was unbelievable.
To see that work and then see you get all the attention you deserve, make this amazing documentary Moment of Contact, and it's supposed to be your now crowning moment where like you can kind of go on in life and do the things you love and not have to worry about finances and stuff. To see that stripped from you by scumbags, which is what they are, and to have
they're not going to have any. There's no repercussions.
No repercussions.
No legal repercussions whatsoever.
So to see that stripped from you though. disgust me. That said, the inspiration that you are to me, like that clip, I go back and watch that sometimes. It's still on Patreon. It was the first Patreon episode we ever posted. And to see, it puts in perspective what I do, what Alessi does, because we work our ass off. We've been doing 80, like he does 70, 80-hour weeks now too. He's been doing that for like a year and a half. I've been doing that for 5 years. And it's like, damn, James was doing this shit and working separate jobs for 25 years just to try to get the respect he long deserves. And like, for all the creators out there who have a dream and want to do stuff, you're looking at a guy right here who never lets anything defeat him, and you had to do it again since then. So shout out to you for doing that and for making another kick-ass documentary.
Thank you.
You know, I hope now we can be
smooth sailing. I should have been laughing in my 50s like, yeah, I did it. Instead I'm like fighting for survival. Like, again? Here's the good news. I was like, well, I've been in the trenches my whole life, so I've been here before. I know how this feels. I know what it's like to be broke. I know what it's like to be completely penniless. I know what it's like not to even have a bank account. I didn't have a bank account when I didn't have a bank account when I was making the Phenomenon for 3 years. And I remember people going, what are you talking about? You don't have a bank account? I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not doing it to upset you. Like, I don't have a bank account because taxes and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And if I put money in the bank, you know, it's gone. So I had to deal with all that.
And it's gone.
Yeah, I know.
It's all gone.
I was like, I came in. I remember I got this check and I was waiting for it. It was like $1,500. I was like, oh, I need that check so bad. I was so desperate. I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm going to pay my cell phone, keep that from getting cut off. Then I got my heat bill. And I was like, oh God, you know, and then, so I got the check and I raced it to the bank. I didn't do the ATM. I went inside to make sure everything went smoothly. I put that check in the bank. The next morning I came to get some money out and she's like, sir, you have a zero balance. I was like, what are you talking about? I said, I put money in last night. Oh, well, you made a withdrawal. I said, no, I didn't. Who? And then she's like, ooh. The IRS took it. I was like, oh my God. You want to talk about a gut punch? It was like somebody punched me in the stomach with everything they had. And I remember thinking to myself, they didn't save me a dime. Not a dime. They took all of it.
James is like, back to doing glory hole blowjobs. Let's go.
Oh my God. I was so devastated.
He's pulling up at a rest.
But I remember thinking they didn't even save, like, they didn't take like 50% or like 70%. They took 100, every penny of it. Anyway, so yeah, so I've been there. So, you know, and it's funny actually because I have this mentality of like someone's going to come take the good stuff that I did get away from me. You know, I paid cash for my kind of my dream car when I could, and when I bought a house. I had a chunk of money. I'd never had a chunk. I'd never had that before. Like it almost made me paranoid because everyone's like, you got to do this and you got to buy stock. I'm like, I'm not a stock guy. No, I'm going to put it all into a house. So I took the chunk and it's gone. But I felt good about it. As an artist, you know, it's like, then at least it's in a house, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah, I'm gonna go dig in the backyard, see where you got that cash buried, baby.
Yeah, right. That was my neighbor when I was growing up.
But the bottom line is, here you are. You have maintained. I know, obviously, there's real human struggles behind the scenes, but you have, at least, and every time we've talked, maintained your happy-go-lucky, positive attitude the whole way. And it's a good lesson because, like, I think that's part of what gets you through and gets you to this point. So,
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't talk about that aspect of it very often, and people think like I had this young filmmaker make a comment. He goes, well, you have it easy and everybody, you know, wants to help you out and blah, blah, blah. I was like,
what? You're
in your 20s. Yeah. I'm in my 50s. I've been in the trenches for 25, 30 years. I'm like, you need to pay your dues, buddy. He was like, yeah, whatever. It really pissed me off. And I just had to cool my jets and be like, okay, this guy doesn't know. Because I don't really talk about that often, what I've been through to get to where I am. Yeah. Not that I'm anywhere special, but it's like I set out to do dreams and I had to claw and fight and kick and scratch and bite my way all the way, man.
Yeah.
It's like nothing but a slew of obstacles in front of you. Try to go for your dreams, right?
100%.
So, yeah. But when I finished the Phenomenon, it was the only movie I finished that I was like satisfied, because
you weren't satisfied with the ones before that?
Nope. I did 50 Years of Denial. I was happy, but I was like, I did it. That was intense. I didn't realize I was in my 20s. I was like, I had no idea how hard that was going to be. Right. Then I did Out of the Blue, and I was moderately happy. And I remember my partner, Boris, was in a fetal position crying, and I've been there too. And his wife's looking at me like she's like, "You're killing my husband," and he's like, I'm
James is like, toughen up,
everybody
bitch.
so hard. I got no money, so I'm not paying him. So he's like broke, and his wife's like, "What the hell?" I was like, "We got to get this movie out, man. This is like, everyone's at the end of the rope." So I released that film. Then I owned it again 3 years later when I got a letter from NBC Universal, and they're like, "We're not going to renew the broadcast option," which I didn't expect them to do anyway. So I owned it again, and I revisited that film, and I think I spent another 2.5 years on Out of the Blue and made a director's cut. And then finished that, again, totally broke, like end of my rope, and it was like, it's good, but it's not what I envisioned. It wasn't like what you have this idea and it doesn't materialize necessarily as you wanted to. So I took another crack at it in my 30s, mid 30s, and I did I Know What I Saw, mid to late 30s. Finished I Know What I Saw, and I was kind of depressed because Lionsgate almost bought it. But then the people at I think it was not acquisitions, but the people that go through the quality control reviewed it, and they said that it had fallen short in production qualities. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't get a deal with Lionsgate because of that, and it was devastated. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Next time, if I don't have the money to do it right, I'll wait until I do. So then that's why.
Watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.